Most people believe that getting arrested for gardening sounds ridiculous. After all, how dangerous can a plant be? But hidden behind garden fences, decorative flower beds, and even wild roadside weeds are plants that can land you in serious legal trouble, sometimes without warning. Laws vary by country and state, but one thing is certain: ignorance does not protect you. Some of these plants were once legal, medicinal, or ornamental. Others are invasive threats or tightly controlled substances. And one of them may already be growing in your yard right now. Here are 10 plants you can be arrested for growing. 1. Opium poppy. At first glance, the opium poppy appears innocent, even enchanting. Its thin, silky petals shimmer in shades of white, pink, purple, or red, swaying gently in the breeze. Many gardeners grow poppies for their beauty alone, unaware that this specific species carries one of the most dangerous legal histories of any plant on Earth. Papaver somniferum is not just a flower. It is the natural source of opium, from which morphine, codeine, and heroin are derived. The milky latex that seeps from its seed pods contains powerful alkaloids that have shaped wars, fueled addictions, and triggered some of the strictest drug laws in human history. And this is where the danger lies. Intent does not matter. In many countries, simply growing opium poppy plants, even one, is illegal. You don't have to harvest it. You don't have to process it. You don't even have to know what it is. The presence of live plants alone can be enough to trigger fines, plant seizure, or criminal charges. What shocks many gardeners is that opium poppy seeds are often sold legally. They're used for baking, sprinkled on bread, or sold as ornamental poppies. But once those seeds sprout and mature, the legal status can change instantly. Authorities may view a blooming poppy bed not as a garden feature but as a controlled drug source. In some regions, possession of opium poppy plants is legally treated the same as possession of narcotics. This means law enforcement can destroy the plants, question the grower, and in extreme cases, press charges, even if the flowers were planted purely for aesthetics. Historically, the opium poppy has been revered and feared. Ancient civilizations used it as a painkiller and sleep aid. Later, it became a cornerstone of pharmaceutical medicine, and at the same time, one of the world's most devastating addictive substances. Because of this dual nature, governments adopted zero-tolerance approaches. The irony is cruel. A flower symbolizing peace, remembrance, and beauty can quietly transform a peaceful backyard into a legal minefield. 2. Coca plant. The coca plant doesn't look threatening at all. In fact, it's modest and unremarkable. A small, leafy shrub with smooth green leaves and tiny pale flowers. But legally, it's one of the most heavily restricted plants on the planet. Erythroxylum coca is the natural source of cocaine, and because of that association, it is illegal to grow in most countries outside of South America. International drug control treaties classify the coca plant itself as a controlled substance, not just the refined drug. For thousands of years, indigenous cultures in the Andes have used coca leaves safely and responsibly. They chew them to reduce fatigue, brew them into tea for digestion, and rely on them to cope with high-altitude sickness. In these regions, coca is sacred, a plant of survival and tradition. But outside those cultural contexts, the rules change dramatically. In many countries, growing a coca plant, even as a houseplant or botanical curiosity, is a serious offense. Importing coca seeds, germinating them, or possessing a mature plant can be enough to attract criminal charges. There is no legal gray zone for hobbyists. Authorities generally do not care whether the plant is grown for education, research, or decoration. The assumption is simple: if the plant can be used to produce illegal drugs, it is illegal itself. In some cases, even attempting to order coca seeds online has resulted in customs seizures and investigations. Because coca plants are slow-growing, sensitive, many people underestimate the risk, believing a single potted plant couldn't possibly matter. Legally, it does. The coca plant represents a deep conflict between ancient tradition and modern law. What is considered cultural heritage in one part of the world is considered criminal evidence in another. And that makes coca one of the most dangerous plants to grow. Not because of how it looks, but because of what it represents. 3. Peyote. Peyote is one of the smallest plants on this list, Yet legally, it carries enormous weight. At first glance, it looks harmless. A low, round, spineless cactus, often no bigger than a golf ball, blending quietly into desert landscapes. Many people mistake it for a decorative succulent. That mistake has ruined lives. Peyote contains mescaline, a powerful, naturally occurring psychedelic that has been used for thousands of years in spiritual ceremonies by Native American tribes. In these sacred contexts, peyote is considered a medicine, a teacher, and a bridge to the spiritual world. Because of this, very limited legal exemptions exist, but only for specific indigenous groups under strict regulations. Outside of those exemptions, peyote is illegal to grow, possess, buy, or sell in many countries and regions. Intent does not matter. You don't need to consume it, you don't need to harvest it. Simply owning a single living peyote cactus can be treated as possession of a controlled substance. What makes peyote especially dangerous for collectors is its popularity among cactus enthusiasts. Some people buy it online, at plant shows, or through private sellers, believing it's just another rare cactus. Authorities do not share that view. There are documented cases of people being arrested, fined, or charged simply for having one peyote plant on a windowsill. Adding to the seriousness is peyote's extreme slow growth. In the wild, it can take 10 to 30 years to mature. Because of over-harvesting and habitat destruction, peyote is considered endangered in many areas. This means unauthorized cultivation isn't just a drug offense, it can also be treated as a conservation crime. To law enforcement, peyote represents 3 red flags at once: an illegal drug source, a protected species, and a culturally sensitive plant. That combination leaves almost no room for forgiveness. A cactus that fits in your palm can quietly place you on the wrong side of the law. 4. Tobacco. Tobacco is one of the most paradoxical plants ever cultivated by humans. It is legal, widely sold, and socially accepted in processed form. Yet in many countries, growing tobacco at home can be illegal or heavily restricted. At first glance, tobacco looks like an ordinary garden plant. Large, soft green leaves, pale pink or white trumpet-shaped flowers. It can easily be mistaken for a decorative ornamental, especially by beginner gardeners. But behind that harmless appearance lies a plant that governments have tightly controlled for centuries. The reason is taxation and regulation. Tobacco is one of the most heavily taxed agricultural products in the world. When you grow it yourself, you bypass licensing systems, excise taxes, and quality controls. And that's where the legal problems begin. In many regions, cultivating tobacco without a permit is classified as illegal agricultural production, even if it's for personal use and never sold. In some countries, authorities allow small-scale cultivation only if the plants are registered, inspected, and processed under strict rules. Drying, curing, or fermenting tobacco leaves without authorization can escalate the situation from a minor violation to a criminal offense. In rare but documented cases, home growers have faced fines, confiscation of plants, and even prosecution. Historically, tobacco was once considered sacred. Indigenous peoples of the Americas used it in rituals, medicine, and spiritual practices long before it became a global commodity. When Europeans encountered tobacco, it spread rapidly, not just because of addiction, but because of its symbolic power. Governments quickly realized its economic value and moved to control it. That control never disappeared. Today, tobacco is treated less like a plant and more like a regulated substance. While you can legally buy cigarettes at almost any store, planting the same leaves in your backyard may violate agricultural or tax laws, depending on where you live. There's another reason tobacco raises concern: nicotine toxicity. Nicotine is a powerful natural insecticide. Handling large amounts of fresh tobacco leaves without protection can cause green tobacco sickness, a form of nicotine poisoning absorbed through the skin. Because of this, some regions restrict cultivation on safety grounds, especially in residential areas. Tobacco is also environmentally demanding. It depletes soil nutrients, requires careful curing, and produces waste that can contaminate groundwater if handled improperly. These factors add another layer of regulation in places with strict environmental laws. So, tobacco exists in a strange legal space, accepted, profitable, and normalized when controlled by corporations, yet suspicious and restricted when grown by individuals. It's a reminder that legality isn't always about danger or morality. Sometimes it's about control. and that makes tobacco one of the quietest examples of a plant that can turn an innocent garden into a legal problem. 5. Jimson weed. Jimson weed, also known as datura, devil's trumpet, or thorn apple, is one of the most terrifying plants you can encounter. Not just legally, but biologically. Unlike many plants on this list, datura doesn't hide its danger behind beauty alone. Every part of it is toxic. Leaves, seeds, flowers, roots, all of it. Datura contains powerful tropane alkaloids, substances that cause extreme hallucinations, delirium, memory loss, and loss of motor control. Unlike classic psychedelics, datura does not create visions. It creates convincing false reality. People under its influence often believe hallucinations are real, leading to accidents, self-harm, or death. Because of this, datura has one of the darkest histories in plant lore. It has been used in poisonings, witchcraft rituals, and dangerous experiments that frequently end in hospitalization or fatal outcomes. Emergency rooms around the world still treat datura poisoning cases every year. Legally, datura exists in a strange gray zone. In some regions, it grows wild and isn't explicitly banned, but intentionally cultivating it can cross a legal line. Authorities may treat it as reckless endangerment, especially if the plant is accessible to children, pets, or the public. In certain jurisdictions, growing datura has been classified as a public safety risk rather than a drug offense. This allows officials to remove the plants, issue fines, or pursue charges without proving intent to misuse it. Simply having it in your garden can be enough. What makes Jimson weed especially dangerous is how easily it spreads. A single plant can produce thousands of seeds, remaining viable in soil for years. Gardeners sometimes find it growing unexpectedly, unaware of what it is, until authorities or neighbors raise concerns. Unlike many toxic plants, datura has no safe dosage. The line between effect and fatal is dangerously thin. That reputation has made it a legal red flag plant, monitored and discouraged even where it isn't outright illegal. Jimson weed is not a curiosity. It's not a harmless wildflower. And in the eyes of the law, growing it can mean you knowingly introduced a serious danger into your community. 6. Japanese knotweed. Japanese knotweed is the plant most likely to already be growing right under your feet, quietly, aggressively, and illegally. Unlike many plants on this list, you don't need to plant it yourself to get into trouble. Simply owning land where it exists can be enough. At first glance, Japanese knotweed looks harmless. Bamboo-like stems, heart-shaped leaves, fast growth. Some people even mistake it for an exotic ornamental plant. But beneath the surface, it behaves more like a living demolition tool. Its roots, known as rhizomes, can grow several meters deep and wide, pushing through concrete, asphalt, foundations, drainage pipes, and walls. It has been known to crack house foundations, destroy roads, and flood sewage systems. Entire buildings have lost value or become uninsurable because of knotweed. That destruction is why the law treats this plant differently. In countries like the UK and parts of Europe, it is illegal to plant Japanese knotweed, transport it, sell it, or allow it to spread. Landowners are legally responsible for controlling it. Ignoring it is not an option. Failing to manage knotweed on your property can lead to fines, lawsuits, or even criminal charges. What shocks most people is this: you don't need to do anything wrong intentionally. If knotweed spreads from your yard into a neighbor's property, you can be sued. If it grows near a boundary, property sale can collapse. If it's discovered during a real estate inspection, mortgages may be denied. Even disposing of knotweed incorrectly is illegal. Cutting it and dumping it in green waste can result in penalties, because fragments as small as a fingernail can regrow into a full infestation. Japanese knotweed doesn't announce itself. It doesn't look threatening. But once authorities are involved, it becomes a legal nightmare that can last for years. This isn't a weed you pull out. It's a problem you inherit. 7. Giant hogweed. Giant hogweed looks like something out of a fairy tale. Tall, dramatic, umbrella-shaped white flowers towering over everything around it. Some people mistake it for an oversized wild carrot or an ornamental plant. That mistake can put you in the hospital. Giant hogweed contains a toxic sap that reacts with sunlight. When the sap touches skin and is exposed to UV light, it causes severe chemical burns, blistering, long-term scarring, and in some cases permanent blindness if it reaches the eyes. Children are especially vulnerable, pets too. Because of the serious health risks and its ability to overwhelm native ecosystems, giant hogweed is classified as a controlled or prohibited invasive species in many countries. Planting it is illegal. Allowing it to spread is illegal. Failing to remove it, once identified, can trigger enforcement action. Landowners have been fined or prosecuted simply for not acting fast enough. What makes giant hogweed especially dangerous legally is misidentification. Many people don't know they have it until someone gets burned, literally. Authorities don't accept ignorance as an excuse once the plant is confirmed. Removal isn't simple either. Cutting it without protective gear can cause injury. Burning it is illegal in many areas. Professional removal is often required, and costs can be significant. In some regions, reporting giant hogweed is mandatory. If it's found near schools, playgrounds, or public paths, the response becomes urgent and aggressive. This plant turns sunlight into a weapon, and the law treats it that way. Giant hogweed isn't just invasive, it's considered a public health hazard growing in plain sight. 8. Kratom. Kratom is one of the most legally confusing plants on Earth, and that confusion is exactly what makes it dangerous for growers. Native to Southeast Asia, kratom is a tropical tree whose leaves have been used for centuries by laborers and healers. In small amounts, the leaves act as a stimulant, increasing energy and focus. In higher doses, they produce sedative and opioid-like effects. That dual nature has placed kratom in a legal gray zone that constantly shifts. In some countries and U.S. states, kratom is completely illegal. Possession, sale, and cultivation are all criminal offenses. In others, possession may be legal, but growing the plant is not. And in a few regions, kratom was legal when people planted it, but illegal by the time it matured. That timing has ruined lives. Because kratom is a tree, not a fast-growing herb, it takes years to reach full size. Laws, however, can change overnight. There are documented cases of growers being charged for trees they planted legally, only to be arrested when local regulations were updated. What makes kratom especially risky is visibility. A mature kratom tree is large, recognizable, and difficult to hide. Neighbors report it, delivery services flag it, online purchases of seeds or saplings can be tracked, and once authorities identify it, intent doesn't matter. Medical use doesn't protect you. Traditional use doesn't protect you. Ignorance doesn't protect you. Kratom sits at the intersection of plant, drug, and policy, and that intersection is unstable. Growing it means betting your freedom on lawmakers staying consistent. They rarely do. 9. Water hyacinth. Water hyacinth may be the most deceptively dangerous plant on this list. Floating peacefully on the surface, its thick green leaves and delicate purple flowers look like something designed for a decorative garden pond. Many people buy it without realizing they're purchasing a biological disaster. Water hyacinth reproduces at an astonishing rate. Under ideal conditions, it can double its population in less than 2 weeks. Entire lakes and rivers have been smothered by it. Sunlight is blocked. Oxygen levels collapse. Fish die. Native plants vanish. That ecological destruction is why many countries treat water hyacinth as contraband. Selling it is illegal. Owning it is illegal. Transporting it is illegal. In some places, even possessing a single plant, regardless of intent, is enough for fines or prosecution. Gardeners often get into trouble accidentally. A backyard pond overflows during heavy rain. A fragment escapes into a drainage system. That's all it takes. Once established in natural waterways, authorities trace it back to the source. And yes, the people have been fined or arrested for it. Water hyacinth turns beauty into liability. It doesn't poison you. It doesn't burn you. It simply destroys everything quietly until enforcement arrives. This is not a plant the law forgives. 10. Henbane. Henbane carries a reputation older than modern law, and that history is exactly why authorities still fear it. Used in ancient medicine, medieval anesthesia, and dark rituals, henbane contains powerful alkaloids such as hyoscyamine and scopolamine. These compounds can cause hallucinations, delirium, memory loss, paralysis, and death, sometimes at surprisingly low doses. Unlike many toxic plants, henbane was never just an accident. It was cultivated deliberately, and it was abused deliberately. That legacy follows it into the present. In many regions, henbane is classified as a restricted or controlled plant. Growing it for curiosity, history, or herbal study is often treated the same as growing a psychoactive drug. Seed possession can raise suspicion. Mature plants can trigger investigation. What makes henbane especially dangerous legally is intent assumption. Authorities often assume misuse first, education second. Its association with poisons, witches' brews, and historical drug use has made it a permanent red flag. Even botanical gardens must follow strict rules when displaying it. Henbane doesn't look threatening, but the law remembers what it was used for, and it hasn't forgotten.